Eric Weisbard of Spin Alternative Record Guide 1995 wrote that Everclear marked American Music Club's failed attempt to, quote, take over the world, adding that the album was, quote, weirdly produced by Caffin. Imagine a pedal stylist's megalomaniac fantasy with the would-be modern rock hit Rise, especially cheesy. However, he praised several songs, including the more mournful AIDS-inspired Sick of Food and The Dead Part of You. Pitchfork's Chris Ott included Everclear in a list of albums common in secondhand stores. He wrote, hideously produced for Alias, the same label that fucked up Yo La Tengo's May I Sing With Me, Everclear is an overstuffed, underdeveloped album drenched in a plate of reverb on par with Queensryche. So
Jesus,
incredibly negative descriptions of this album, and I think they are 100% wrong.
Yes. Well, here I'll say they're 95% wrong, and we'll get into it when we get into the production. But fuck those guys. Unnecessarily harsh.
My God.
I mean, classic music writer, right? I mean,
right.
Classic music writer just trying to be a dick.
I've noted something, because I still read a lot of, music blogs and whatever, and they're reviewing albums. And maybe it's just that they generally only review albums that they want to review now. But there's a definite, drop in the number of outright, vicious,
just slagging albums,
Yeah.
I feel like that used to happen more commonly, and it was almost like
that was
these
thing.
writers. Yeah, it was a thing. Like they had to kind of earn their chops by tearing down different albums in some of the reviews or whatever. And but I needless to say, I disagree with these two gentlemen.
Well, I mean, even if you kind of set aside that I agree was certainly kind of a 90s, early 2000s thing, right? About kind of what music writers would do. They'd be super, super snarky. Set that aside and take what they're saying on their words. I just think this is a completely wrong estimation of not just the album in and of itself, but how this album sits within the progression of American Music Club's albums. I think it's okay to say, I really like early American Music Club because I like the more Americana, more lo-fi kind of vibe in the early records. I think that's a reasonable take. But I just think that this album sounds so rich, so powerfully atmospheric and kind of soundscaptual, J. William Hall.
Yes.
And cohesive in a way that no other American Music Club album has sounded to this date.
Well, I would argue that this album is singular unto itself. I cannot think of another album that I would be like, oh, that kind of sounds like Everclear. Like, this is singular unto itself, okay? So there may be some reverbs or something in there that are of their era, but it was done beautifully and it was unique,
Yeah, and I don't know. I just feel like, and again, I attribute this, it could be wrong that I attribute this to Caffin, but when I look at there are certainly drummer changes over the course of the early era of the band. There are, some bass playing changes and stuff like that. But more or less, I think the band is relatively kind of stable insofar as personnel, and certainly stable insofar as studio and producer, right? And then they move to this, and there is a wholesale change in their sound. And I think that wholesale change coalesces the band into what I think of when I think of the American Music Club sound, right? It is not purely Americana or alt country. It is not purely slowcore. It is not purely kind of like atmospheric. It's this interesting, very unique combination of all of those things. But every song, from one song to the next, whether they're upbeat, downbeat, mostly Eitzel solo, full band, rockers, they all for the first time sound like a single band to me on this record. I think that this album, in total contrast to what these two idiots wrote in the 90s about this album, I think this represents just a quantum leap forward for the band. We'll talk about Mercury, next time, and we can debate the production on that and whether that's yet another step forward or a step back or just a step laterally. But I think that the band, as a result of whatever happened in preparation for Everclear and during the recording of Everclear, really goes from the minor leagues to the big leagues creatively.